Excellencies, dignitaries, experts, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to everyone joining from different time zones. I welcome you all to this policy dialogue where we are all gathered to celebrate the International Day of Biodiversity. Human activities such as burning fossil fuels and industrialized farming have combined to dramatically impact the planet's biomes and ecosystems. Climate change, deforestation, and pollution have destroyed and damaged habitats, changed where species live, and eliminated species at a speed and scale comparable to major extinction events of the past. Wild areas such as forests and peatlands are vital carbon sinks, absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. But as warming increases and more wild areas are destroyed, more carbon dioxide enters the atmosphere, and warming accelerates, even more threatening more destruction of biodiversity. This creates a vicious cycle of heating, leading to destruction, leading to more heating and more destruction. So, what are the pathways of preventing the threats to biodiversity? How can we address direct and indirect drivers of biodiversity loss and become part of the plan? In this policy dialogue, we shall delve on multi-actor perspectives on why greater efforts are needed, including taking integrated and holistic approaches to planning and implementation to address this issue. Before initiating this policy dialogue, I request Dr. Arvind Kumar, President, India Water Foundation, to present an overview of the policy dialogue. Dr. Arvind Kumar is a strategist and key influencer in development sector with more than 28 years of experience. As an author, columnist, water and human rights pro-activist, and specializes in concepts like ecosystem-based adaptation, water energy food nexus, with specific emphasis on transversal approach of interlinkages between water, environment, and SDGs. He has published over 500 plus research articles in several books. He is a proud recipient of Achievers Award for his contribution to the environment from International Human Rights Organization in collaboration with United Nations Information Center, India. Dr. Kumar, please.
Thank you, Sweta, and good afternoon, everyone. Dr. David Cooper, Acting Executive Secretary of the Secretariat of Convention on Biological Diversity, Dr. Sangmin Nam, Director, Environment and Development Division of UN ESCAPE, Dr. Prema Gamsu, Director General of ICMOD, Sri N. Sarvanane, Senior Scientist, Center for Marine Living Resources and Ecology, Ministry of Earth Sciences, Government of India, Ms. Teminina Sarif, Regional Director, South Asia CGIAR, Dr. Amini Al-Farara, Water Resource Officer at the Water and Land Division FAO, Mr. Uttam Kumar Sinha, Senior Fellow, Manohar Parikar Institute for Defense Studies Analysis, New Delhi, and Dr. Yasveer Bhatnagar, Country Representative of the IUCN India Office. I welcome you all to this celebration of International Day of Biodiversity. I also welcome the online audience joining from around the globe for this event. The landmark UN agreement to reverse nature's rapid decline before it is too late, known as the Plan of Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, adopted by 200 countries at COP15, calls for protecting 30% of the planet's land, ocean, and inland waters, and includes 23 other targets to help restore and protect ecosystems and endangered species worldwide. Without biological diversity, there is no other life on Earth, including our own. Even though we are often obvious to it, this diversity of life is that what provide clean water, oxygen, and all other things that end up being part of our diet, as well as clothing and shelter. It provides a lot of psychological benefit too, which are not much appreciated today. 1/4 of all modern medicines are derived from tropical plants, and 70% of all cancer drugs are natural or bio-inspired products. any progress by the water sector with regard to water use efficiency, sustainable consumption of water-dependent product is a contribution to biodiversity conservation. Since all use the same water, mainstreaming biodiversity into the water sector is essential if biodiversity goals are to be achieved. Often these work together to deliver solutions that meet both water development and biodiversity conservation goals under a broader sustainable development agenda. I tried to incorporate the same as a member in the National Wetland Committee of the Ministry of Environment, Forest, Climate Change in wetland guidelines. We drafted for the implementation of wetland rules of uh, 2017. As the result, India now can boast of 80 wetland sites, which are crucial for harvesting water biodiversity. And the Wetland Day 2024 was officially celebrated in India. We recommended that the management of wetlands should be guided by integrated management plan, structure wetland biodiversity ecosystem service values, and the need to secure people's involvement and participation. Responsible production and consumption of our natural resources come at a catastrophic cost. We are destroying our planet at an unprecedented rate and losing a vast number of plants, animals, insects, and marine life in the process. To determine all of our own future, for instance, the mission life introduced by the Prime Minister of India promotes an environmentally conscious lifestyle that focus on mindful and deliberate utilization instead of mindless and wasteful consumption. It envisions replacing the prevalent use and dispose economy and governed by middle class and destructive consumption with a circular economy, which would be defined by mindful and deliberate utilization. Another driver of biodiversity loss is climate change, and biodiversity loss is causing climate change too. It is vicious circle. Destroyed and degraded ecosystems release more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere than burning fossil fuels. The consequences of burning fossil fuels, rising global temperatures, and increase in wildfires and ocean acidification, to name a few, are threatening habitats and wildlife alike. At COP28 last year, on the very first day, world leaders reached a historic consensus to approve the loss and damage fund to support communities that are already feeling climate change disastrous impact, including biodiversity loss and its impact on livelihoods. Do you know that our strongest natural defense against climate change is biodiversity? Can our generation forget about the corona nightmare? Multiple anthropogenic drivers from promoted zoonotic pathogen spillover and disease emergence, such as land use change, intensive livestock production, wildlife trade, and climate change. A One Health collaborative approach provided important tools for addressing both the COVID-19 pandemic recovery and future genetic spillover risk, while taking into account biodiversity and ecosystem health. Biodiversity also contribute to food security, nutrition by providing nutritionally diverse foods. Cultivated species are important source of nutrition. Yet of more than 6,000 plant species that has been cultivated for food, only 9 species account for 66% of total crop production. Incorporating a greater diversity of crops and livestock, creating and maintaining well-connected habitat for associated uh, biodiversity, practicing sustainable soil management, reducing the use of synthetic input can be increased biodiversity and ecosystem without negatively affecting yields. The total economic gain to society from transforming the food and land systems have been estimated to have the potential to reach $5.7 trillion a year by 2030. Surprisingly, land and ocean ecosystems currently absorb 60% of the human-caused emissions, and they are uh, planet's only way of storing massive amount of carbon dioxide. Coastal wetland, for example, protect against storm surges and flooding during extreme weather, while also storing carbon dioxide and creating oxygen. Every dollar invested in environmental protection generates more than $2,500 in so-called ecosystem services. Water, regulation, coastal protection, carbon storage, and other invisible function that nature provides. Scientists have identified 2 lakh marine species. The actual number is estimated to be in millions. Unsustainable fishing practices, pollution, climate change, and habitat destruction are threatened creatures that may vanish before we have know they are existed. A 2023 UN report found that we have altered 75% of the planet's terrestrial environment, 40% of its marine environment, and 50% of the streams and the rivers. Nearly three-fourths of our freshwater resources devoted to crop or livestock production, which often means using pesticides, fertilizer, fuel, and antibiotics that pollute our river systems, streams, seas, and soil. Every day we are destroying habitat and degrading massive amount of soil and water through industrial manufacturing, agriculture, while jeopardizing precious natural resources that could be lost forever in our lifetime. In the past 2 decades, we have lost half of the planet's coral reef. Restoring degraded ecosystem alone could provide up to 1/3 of the climate mitigation needed to keep the Earth from warming to far above pre-industrial levels. This means creating protected areas, curbing extractive capitalism, and restoring the planet's immense amount of degraded land. We need partnerships among countries, communities, consumers, and corporations. And we are seeing sign of progress every day. The Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework represents an immense and long-awaited step towards halting extinction rate that some scientists are calling an extinctional crisis akin to climate change. By its nature, biodiversity is cross-cutting. No single body alone can address the challenges that lie ahead in achieving the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity. We need the full engagement of all the multilateral environmental agreements and indeed all stakeholders to become part of the plan. I take this opportunity to thank the Ministry of Jal Shakti, Government of India, for supporting this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kumar, for presenting the overview of the event. I now introduce our next speaker, who has a very special message he has shared with us, Dr. David Cooper, Acting Executive Secretary of the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity. He has more than 30 years of experience in environmental and agricultural science and policy and international negotiations, including more than 20 years with CBD. He has built strong and productive working relationships with parties in all the regions and with partners in civil societies, international organizations, and scientific community. Dr. David Cooper.
This International Day for Biological Diversity, I invite you all to be part of the plan, the Biodiversity Plan. The Biodiversity Plan, or the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, is humanity's best chance to halt and reverse biodiversity loss and live in harmony with nature. Currently, governments are working to revise their national biodiversity strategies and action plans to ensure they are aligned with the plan. Governments are expected to present their NBSAPs at the next meeting of the parties to the convention, COP16 in Cali, Colombia, which will be held under the theme Peace with Nature. For the plan to work, however, we need a whole of society approach that includes everyone. We need civil society, indigenous peoples, local communities, women, youth, business, finance and academia. We can all be part of the plan. Through informed purchasing decisions, citizens can relieve the pressure exerted on biodiversity, one shopping cart at a time. Through their votes and engagement in the political process, citizens can prompt politicians to embrace the biodiversity plan as a domestic policy priority. The private sector can take responsibility to align their business and investment decisions with human well-being and nature's health. Civil society and youth can continue to promote awareness and advocate for action. Together, we must respect the traditional knowledge of indigenous peoples and local communities as true custodians of biodiversity. We must empower youth and women, and we must do all of this to put nature on a path to recovery for the benefit of people and the planet. The goals and targets of the Biodiversity Plan are indeed ambitious. They are also necessary. Achieving them is the only realistic option to ensure a livable planet. We must all work together, today and every day. We must all be part of the plan.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cooper, for your wonderful message. And we all are trying to be part of the plan because that is the only solution to go ahead. My next speaker, Dr. Sangmin Nam, currently works as the Director, Environment and Development Division of ASCAPE. Before joining the UN, he taught at Hanyang University in Seoul, served as an expert member and subcommittee coordinator of the Presidential Commission on Sustainable Development of the Republic of Korea, and worked with Green Korea United, a leading environmental NGO in the ROK, as a founding member and the manager of program and policy. Dr. Sangmin Nam, please.
Well, I have prepared a few points regarding those questions provided in advance. But I would like to start my intervention with the point that Dr. Kumar mentioned. You mentioned that we see signs of progress every day. You are highlighting the various challenges that we are facing, but there is also great multiple signs of progress. So one is I see increasing awareness on this broken relationship between nature and human. During this COVID time, there was quite a common findings that we had. So especially now, even publics are aware of this significant role of a zoonotic disease that Dr. Kumar mentioned in infectious disease, which account for about almost 70% of a new infectious disease. So this understanding on the relationship between animal and ecosystem and human being in the context of public health is quite important progress to me. And my second point is increasing recognition of a nature-based solution and integration of a nature-based solution into climate action. SCOP has 49 regional members and then plus 4 non-regional members. And out of 49 regional members, we have 43 countries representing NBS, nature-based solution in their NDCs. And also out of these 43 countries, 21 countries quantify NBS-related baseline emissions. So this is also important progress in integrating action on biodiversity into climate action and vice versa. And then next point is also, we also see increasing opportunity of a cross-sectoral coordination. You also highlighted the significant role of biodiversity in medicine and food. And so, and now we have seen, increasing awareness and also national initiatives connecting biodiversity into other sectoral actions. And of course, forestry management and agroecology and even fisheries. And also as you mentioned, this coastal ecosystem management, that is quite important progress now. And then ESCA will convene regional ocean-based climate action September in Bangkok to initiate regional program on ocean-based climate action, which include coastal ecosystem protection. But while we have these signs of progress, of course, there are multiple challenges. And the GBF highlighted the need of scaling of financing, whether 20 billion per year, and then after that, $30 billion per year by 2030. But now when we try to quantify one of our fundamental challenges, there is no concrete number that we can present out there. OECD report a few years ago, their estimation is biodiversity finance at global level is about $9 billion. And 2 years ago, UNEP came up with the state of finance for nature. This report identified about $2 billion in terms of ODA. But nevertheless, in terms of MBS financing, this report estimate about $200 billion per year. So there are multiple numbers. So in order to really facilitate more in-depth discussion and generate commitments of donors, multilateral financial institutions, we do need to find a way to measure how much is being spent on this. And then the GBF also highlighted not only this international financing, but domestic resources and private resources and innovative schemes such as payment for ecosystem. This is nothing new. Ecosystem service and the biodiversity offset. And then, so again, so our discussion on financing also needs to really address those issues, domestic and also private financing. And then institutional capacity and human resource. As I mentioned, most countries now have a NBS in their NDCs. And long-term low emission development strategies, most countries quantify their carbon sequestration capacity by 2050 to meet net zero. Like here, Thailand, so next to 20 years, increasing carbon sequestration capacity by 40 million tons. Cambodia, 50 million tons. But the fundamental question is whether we have a sufficient capacity and financial resources and then human resources to make such a quick action to scale up, speed up the implementation of a nature-based solution. Also still cross-sectoral coordination is an issue. I mentioned the $200 billion for nature-based solution. But this report also identified about the $7 trillion being spent. This nature negative project. So, I mean, one of the questions in your concept note is not only greening finance. So Of course, scaling of finance is important for nature-based solution and biodiversity. But if we cannot prevent this heavy investment in nature negative program project, so there is not much progress. So let me stop here and then hope to have a next round of information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nam, for especially pointing out the crucial investment part in biodiversity, which is much needed right now. Thank you so much. We'll come back to you for your closing remark as well. My next speaker is Dr. Pema Gyamtso. He's the Director General of ICI Mode. He has served the Royal Government of Bhutan for over 3 decades in natural resource management and planning. In his previous role as Minister of Agriculture and Forests, he was involved and often led to the enactment of over 60 pieces of legislation. And throughout his career, he has also worked at the grassroots level, where he was overseeing the formation of over 400 farmer groups and cooperatives. He holds a PhD in natural science from the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, Zurich. Dr. Gyamtso, please.
Thank you, Shweta, and good afternoon, distinguished panelists and participants from around the globe. Happy International Biodiversity Day, and let me see if I can share my PPT. Can you see it?
No, we cannot. The option has been open. You can share it from your side easily, but we cannot see it.
You cannot see it, is that right? Still, you're not able to see it, Shweta? So anyway,
No.
Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of this very interesting program. I will try to focus my presentation on mountain biodiversity and particularly the Hindu Kush Himalayan region.
Try again to share it. One more time, please try to share it, if it can be shared.
Okay, if you can just hear me, that is fine, I think.
I have given you the access to share.
So I have not been able to, maybe I can just carry on, no? What do you think?
Okay, okay.
Okay, I'll just carry on. Can you hear me though? You can hear me, no?
Yes, yes, we can.
So for those who probably don't know much about ICIMOD, I think it will be good to just give a brief introduction. ICIMOD is an intergovernmental regional organization based in Kathmandu, Nepal, and our main role is for bringing together, the policymakers, scientists, and workers share their knowledge and then share this across the region. So we call ourselves a knowledge and learning center. We have 8 member countries, as you know, stretching from Afghanistan through to Myanmar, consisting also of Bangladesh, Bhutan, China, India, Myanmar, Nepal, and Pakistan. Our workspace is at the interface between science, policy, and practice. So we are not a research organization per se, we are not also a development organization or a university, but we try to link all these sectors together. We gather knowledge and evidence from scientists and institutions and universities, package them and try to disseminate them to the policymakers and practitioners. Recently, we have come up with a new strategy to give more focus on the impacts of climate change and also to try to make our work more green, more inclusive, and more climate resilient. And of course, when we say green, we are very conscious of the fact that we have to be resource efficient and we have to promote carbon neutral programs and move towards clean energy and find nature positive solutions. And also, we are looking at programs that are gender transformative and includes youth and other stakeholders. We also look at protecting the communities living in the mountains from natural disasters and also to see how we can help them adapt to the impacts of climate change through policy, finance, and institutions. Now, just to give you a brief picture of what you're talking about, when you say Hindu Kush Himalaya, it is not just the mountains. is also all the river basins around them. The Hindu Kush Himalayan region, of course, has 10 of Asia's largest river basin systems. As you can see, the light blue areas are the river basins and the blue areas are the mountains. This is the geophysical picture of the region stretching 3,500 kilometers from west to east, covering 4 million square kilometers. But I think the important thing to note is it is known as the third pole because it has the largest reserve of ice outside of the north and south poles, around 6,000 cubic kilometers. As I said, the 10 of Asia's major river systems are located here, providing livelihood, supporting the lives of close to 1.9 billion people, that is close to one-fourth of the global population. And importantly for today's topic, 4 of the 36 global biodiversity hotspots are located in this region. But this region is also facing a serious crisis. As you have heard already, the triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. But in the mountains, all these are happening much faster. So as I've already said, up to 85% of the population living both within and outside are dependent on the ecosystem services of the mountains. The quality of ecosystems are highly threatened and is declining. In particular, the wetlands and rapid systems are most vulnerable. And due to climate change or warming, uh, species which are found in tropical and warmer areas are now moving up. As you can see from this picture, tigers are moving up into the snow area and then perhaps displacing the snow leopard. So the question is, where would the snow leopard go? Now, ISIMO is trying to address this crisis through a number of approaches. First, I think it's very important to provide the kind of evidence that would be needed to convince policymakers and practitioners. So we carried out this Hindu-Kush Himalayan assessment report in 2019 and another assessment called High-Wise Himalayan Water Ice Society and Ecosystems Outlook in 2023. And also we collaborated with UNEP and the third pole to come out with this publication to contribute to this contribution on the third pole environment assessment, which looks in greater detail on the ecosystems. We are moving towards the establishment of a high-level institutional mechanism because regional cooperation is a must if we are to conserve biodiversity. Because biodiversity, species don't recognize political boundaries, so it is very important for us to promote transboundary cooperation. So we hope to be able to organize a second ministerial level summit sometime this September. But I think all of us have already mentioned that partnerships are important, and these partnerships are important at all levels, local, national, regional, and global levels, if we are to successfully implement the global biodiversity management plan. An example of what we do here is we work with partnerships across countries and institutions. Here is an example on our work on freshwater biodiversity. So we work across 4 countries and many different institutions in the different countries. Of course, we have already heard the nexus between water, food, energy, and the ecosystem. These are very much interdependent, interlinked, and also, one change in one system affects the other. So I think this has already been well touched upon. I will not dwell too much on this. We have very strong strategic partnerships with our organizations, government and non-government research organizations and universities in the region. So I will not go through the list. In India, we are working with GDPAN, National Institute of Himalayan Environment, the Indian Council for Forestry Research and Education, and the Ashoka Trust for Research in Ecology and the Environment at TRAE in India. Similarly, we are working with a number of UN and international organizations. You can see the list with all the UN agencies, including UNEP, dealing with biodiversity, and with CGIAR centers. We are in the process of signing a memorandum of understanding. We have also a number of partners who are, independent research organizations. Global engagement is actively engaged in global engagement to take forward the biodiversity management conservation plans. we have been actively supporting our regional member countries to develop their national biodiversity strategy and action plans. We are also participating in the BSTTA 26 in Nairobi, just concluded, I think, a few days ago, and also preparing for COP16. In terms of science, we recently had this workshop here, the conference on the assessment, the nexus assessment of interlinkages between water, food, climate change, health, and biodiversity here at ICIMOD itself. So my concluding messages: first, cooperation and collaboration across scales and across all levels are crucial for implementing the biodiversity plans. Mountain ecosystems covering 27% of the global terrestrial area deserves much more attention. Right now, mountains do not receive the kind of attention that is needed. And also we need more mountain-specific targets and indicators in the global biodiversity framework. And this has been recognized at the SPSTTA 26. We need to also revitalize the program of work on mountain biodiversity, so-called POWMB, and we also need increased investment in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much, and over to you, Shweta.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gyamso, for specifically bringing our attention to the mountain region and how the targets and goals should be incorporated with an aim towards mountain ecosystems. Thank you so much. My next speaker is Dr. Amani Alfara. She's a Water Resources Officer at the Water and Land Division of FAO. She has worked extensively on water management issues and challenges at national, regional, and global level. She is particularly interested in water management issues and programs, not only from an engineering perspective, but also from a socio-economic angle. Dr. Alfara, please. Yes, we can see your presentation.
Hello, everyone. I would like to start by thanking all the organizers for putting together this event today. FAO, as co-lead of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, support countries and stakeholders planning, monitoring, and tracking restoration effort through the FERM platform. This geospatial registry tracks global progress and shares best practices for ecosystem restoration. Multi-sectoral partnership and dialogue, as has been emphasized by previous speakers, are crucial for effective biodiversity strategies. In November 2023, FAO, CBD, and UNEP hosted an event to build a roadmap for GBF Target 2. The event showcased examples such as the Brazil National Program on Native Vegetation Recuperation, Vietnam Wetland Restoration, China Great Wall, Burkina Faso Dryland Restoration, and Colombia Marine and Coastal Restoration. FAO effectively supports countries in developing integrated national biodiversity strategy and action plans, engaging all stakeholders. Biodiversity enhances the resilience of a productive ecosystem and livelihood to socioeconomic and environmental shocks, including climate change. FAO in 2019 report, The State of the World Biodiversity for Food and Agriculture, reveals a decline in essential biodiversity as 33% of fish stock are overfished. 26% of local livestock breeded are at risk of extinction, and only 4% of the over 6,000 planet species grown significantly contribute to global production. Mainstreaming biodiversity in agriculture can ensure the continued provision of ecosystem services, support sustainable agriculture that promote biodiversity through values change, safeguard the livelihood of a small-scale produce, indigenous people and local community who are custodian of biodiversity. As we see, the ecosystem-based solution or nature-based solution is the center of the our community, the socioeconomic, the biodiversity, but as a practices, how we can translate that into practices from agriculture. So I listed some of the practices such as wetland restoration, agroforestry, cover cropping, crop rotation diversity, conservation tillage, and so on. At FAO, if we think that all these practices required water in the center, so we at FAO have agricultural ecosystem-based solution noticed as an increasingly recognized and effective approach to address land and water degradation, as well as enhance food security and promote biodiversity. FAO established an agricultural ecosystem-based solution of expert working group from 24 institute or 24 members that represent their institute. They developed a guideline for design, monitor, and evaluate ecosystem-based solution intervention and integrated water resource management. And here we look, if you want to restore any ecosystem, you need the water for, if there is no water, it will be desert. There will be no ecosystem. So the expert working group now currently are reviewing the final stage of the tool that feature quantifiable impact-oriented indicator, qualitative indicators, allowing for intervention tracking. The tool will assess intervention progress and impact over the time to foster project improvement and optimize resources allocation, identify successful intervention and strategies while pointing areas needed to adjust. The agricultural ecosystem tool will continue to achieve SDG target 2.4 in sustainable food production system and target 6.5 implemented integrated water resource management at all levels. If we use the tool is having the theory of a change was like reflecting the 6 pillar of sustainability of EOCD. And if you have the input of the tool will be, the output report will have this, where it can show you the progress through implementation at different stage. And it will show you to which direction your project was. Is it towards efficiency or effectiveness or more sustainability? To conclude, achieving food security and nutrition for all relies on biodiversity, which offer multiple livelihood benefits. FAO's 2019 assessment highlight the essential role of biodiversity and ecosystem services in sustainable agriculture, forestry, aquaculture, and fishery. Collaboration among a global expert, academia, country representative, NGO, indigenous, indigenous people and local community is crucial to achieve global targets, including the coming Montreal Agreement, Biodiversity Framework, Target 2 on restoration of 30% degraded ecosystem, and SDG 15 on protecting a restoration ecosystem, halting biodiversity loss. And by this, I thank all of you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alfara, for making us aware of the agricultural tool developed by FAO. Thank you so much for intervention. I'll come back to you for your closing comment later. My next speaker is Dr. N. Sarvanani. He's a senior scientist at Center for Marine Living Resources and Ecology, Ministry of Earth Sciences, Government of India. He's an expert in taxonomy and biodiversity informatics, with more than 25 years of experience in marine living resource research in the country. He's representing India as steering group member in Ocean Biographic Information System of Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission. He is currently appointed as Scientific Committee Representative of Commission for the Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources, Hobart, Australia. Dr. Sarvanani, please.
Yeah, good evening to all of you. First of all, let me thank organizer, for having me in this important deliberation. And I actually participate in this meeting on behalf of our secretary, Dr. Ravichandran, who has been actually inspiration to actually many of our actually ongoing actually negotiation, at a global level, especially the biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction. As many of you know, actually under UNCLOS, the biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction is a legal agreement is coming up. It will be actually ratified, almost in a 1 year period from now. So the idea of actually the biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction is to actually plug certain actually management gaps which were actually existed in other global agreement. So I would actually take this opportunity to first of all actually again thank the organizer, particularly bringing this point that how to integrate actually multi-stakeholder action for building back biodiversity, because this is actually some new actually thinking which has actually emerged during the negotiation in the biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction. So therefore, the people have countries have actually come up with an idea, not only actually go with a particular objective of actually biodiversity conservation in area beyond national jurisdiction, but also actually see that what are all the other areas that can actually affect. So unless actually the other areas which are actually addressed, for the biodiversity conservation, perhaps actually this particular instrument also would not actually bring out the outcome that is actually initially intended. So I actually again thank the organizer for this particular actually topic. What I would actually concentrate, because especially my previous speakers are all actually focused more on actually the biodiversity in the land and water, etc. But since by virtue of actually a scientist working in the marine area, I would actually not only flag certain issues in the marine conservation, biodiversity conservation, but also as to how this actually transversal integration has to actually happen in order to actually bring out a meaningful outcome in all our endeavors to actually conserve. So, mainly all of us would agree to the fact that biodiversity is a synonym to sustainability. If at all the country or the globe is interested towards actually sustainability goal, the first and foremost thing which has to be focused is biodiversity, which has been actually very clearly stated in the previous speaker and as well as also in the introduction. So environmental security is actually interlinked, as has been stated earlier, with the food security, social security, cultural security, and financial security. So none of these things would be possible without actually ensuring the environmental security, in which actually biodiversity is clearly actually interwoven. See, unlike actually land biodiversity, the biodiversity in the sea is completely different. Is guided by actually certain actually processes which are actually unique to only sea. You see, basically, the sea is not actually a static region, which is highly interconnected, and they have actually permanent gradient which are actually long lasting, like actually 100 years. So therefore, unlike in land, the biodiversity in the sea is actually accustomed to actually a minor variability in the environment, and they have actually a wider boundary. So therefore, any changes in the actually ecosystem or actually the environment in which they live is actually going to be a deleterious. So therefore, there is actually a huge actually extinction of biodiversity before actually they have been actually even invented for the first one. So even before they were invented, they are extinct. This is what actually many of the global reports are actually saying. So not only actually this one, now here we have actually ocean warming, then the ocean acidification, sea level rise, and over exploitation of dependent species are actually crucial. So, there are many global instruments, especially relating to the conservation of biological diversity. So all of us know there is actually a Sustainable Developmental Goal, Convention on Biological Diversity, and United Nations actually Fish Stock Agreement, and also actually the forthcoming BBNJ. So many of the actually reports have actually clearly stated the fact that the diversity which is actually present in the oceans are actually vastly extinct, and they will actually become unrestorable after actually even actually a few years of time from now. So the Living Planet Report 2002 also have actually clearly stated the rate of extinction, especially of the species actually present in oceans, are actually fast, and particularly few organisms like coral and sharks and rays and marine mammals are actually going extinct at a faster, alarming rate. So we don't have to actually, specify or actually emphasize more than anything what has been actually given in the SDG goals. There are about actually 17 SDG goals, but if you see the map, the actually biodiversity actually value across this actually 17 goals, more than actually 12 actually goals are actually one or other way is related to biodiversity conservation. So if you actually take the total area which is actually protected, and the sense actually it's conserved, I would say, only 8% of the global ocean is protected in the name of actually marine protected area. But the the interesting information here is that in the domestic waters, especially in the EEZ, if you actually see, 18% has been actually conserved. Whereas in the ABNJ region, which means actually the region which are not actually belongs to any country, are only in which only 1.44% has been actually protected. So here there is a huge gap. Actually, what kind of actually cooperation is required, interinstitutional, between actually global instrument, all those things has to be actually applied in conservation of biodiversity in the ABNJ region rather than in the EEZ of any country. In my opinion, this actually particular talk would be useful to actually bring out actually a framework with which actually not only how actually this transversal shift can happen, covering actually all the sectors which are actually related to actually biodiversity conservation, but also how this actually consultation would become actually a reasonable thing that needs to be actually paid attention, because although there has been ups and downs in the actually the consultation part, which has been actually reflected in many global reports, but there is no other way other than actually going for a consultation. So therefore, I would even cite an example in the BBNJ negotiation. Out of actually 4 package element which is there, especially on the conservation of marine living resources, biodiversity in the ABNJ region, one aspect is related to actually capacity building and transfer of marine technology, and actually a strong actually institutional mechanism and dissemination mechanism is inbuilt. So, which actually takes care of every aspects of actually the human requirement, taking into actually consideration of the indigenous population and their rights, etc. So it is important for us to actually see that the conservation is not actually seen in silos. It has to be actually seen as a package. So which you should actually cover the interlink all the actually major sectors that are actually helpful for the conservation. So finally, my actually thought is that the global instruments are actually policy measures which should be actually mutually inclusive, with respect to its objective. Though they are actually mutually exclusive in their target, because target varies between actually the instruments and actually global framework, but they should be mutually inclusive of its objective. So therefore, the problem is addressed in a actually pragmatic and actually holistic manner. So if you have to actually see what kind of actually policy integration is required as far as actually the conservation of marine living resources, there are actually starting from Convention of Biological Diversity, UNFCCC, then CITES, Ramsar Convention, and UNCCD, Antarctic Treaty System, and ITPGRFA, CMS, Paris Agreement. There are hundreds of actually, almost actually, I have listed on something around 9 actually an agreement, but they are actually having a target which are actually based on the objective they have set. But how far actually they have mutually inclusive to their objectives of the biodiversity conservation is something actually is yet to be actually seen. So basically, I would not actually go into the details of actually how this integration actually to be done, but I wanted to re-emphasize that there is actually a tremendous actually scope is there for lateral integration of this actually different sector, especially as actually in the background report, it has been actually mentioned that water, energy, food, and biodiversity has to be actually integrated transversally, and by addressing also climate change, like actually climate change is one of the aspects, but in marine sector we have actually several other actually problems, ocean acidification and the sea level rise and over exploitation of actually certain dependent species. So it is important to understand the nexus between actually different sectors like water, energy, food, and biodiversity, which has been actually clearly stated by others also. But what is the actually a policy level change? Say, for example, water management, as has been actually stated in the beginning also, the irrigation technique to conserve the water. But of course, actually, the irrigation technique is important for the water management. But if it is actually inclusive of the biodiversity conservation, it would be wonderful. Second, in the energy policies, again, energy efficient technology in water and food production, which is actually indirectly helps actually overuse of actually biodiversity, or actually it's actually an abundance. Then the third one is agricultural practices, which we have. Sustainable adoption of sustainable farming practices is also one of the actually way that can actually address the biodiversity conservation. Of course, actually there are horizontal linkages which has been actually very clearly stated in the background paper and as well as in many actually policy papers which are actually out there. I would not actually go into this one, but coming to the implementation of this transversal shift, so we have actually policy integration, stakeholder collaboration involving government, NGO, business, and local community in the decision. But what I find is more important is on all these things is the data share. Promote transparency and the exchange of information between sector to inform better decision making, which is what actually is more required at this point in time, especially with the advent of actually new transformative IT technology. This promotion of transparency in exchanging the information is actually important. That should be done through a clearinghouse mechanism, whether people do like it or not, but the information should be available in the clearinghouse mechanism, which should be actually even more important in the implementation of the idea of transversal shift across the sector. Of course, I would not actually undermine the last point, which is about actually monitoring and the evaluation mechanism, because the robust mechanism to track the progress in terms of actually the assessing the transversal shift between the sector is more important. So I would actually go immediately into the actually the benefits, because the benefits that is actually something which people get attracted to it. So when it comes to actually the benefits of this transversal approach is actually the balanced economic growth. Then you can actually also actually come out with the policies for long-term and long-term preservation, and also the stability of the ecosystem, including its health. But what we have as a challenge in this, there are three areas: policy fragmentation, sectoral silos, lack of coordination. See, policy fragmentation, that is what in the beginning when I said, there is actually a mutually agreed things has to be there. So in terms of actually biodiversity conservation, there must be mutually inclusive way of actually framing the policy. Of course, the sectoral silos is something which has to be actually addressed to, and finally the lack of coordination between actually the institutions and organizations of actually different actually nature and different sector has to actually work. Especially the biodiversity conservation should be made as an inclusive part of it. So the solution to all these things, as I said, strengthening the institutional framework, promoting cross-sectoral dialogue, and increasing the financial and technical support. So basically, all these ideas would work only with actually necessary funding. The importance of innovative mechanism for supporting financially this process has to be identified. That comes only with actually incentivizing the projects which are related to actually conservation and biodiversity monitoring has to be actually funded, but it should be actually innovative. If it is kind of actually one-time investment, voluntary contribution by the people, or actually a investment actually on in a predictable manner, those things are actually fine. But thing is that it should have an innovative mechanism to fund all these actually things. So in summary, I would actually say that integrated policy framework, see, instead of actually having an individual policy for each sector, there must be an integrated policy framework, and you should also actually develop a shared vision instead of actually, even I would say biodiversity conservation should not be actually seen in silos. It should be actually clubbed with the other sectors. So therefore, a shared vision is important. I think thank you for the organizer for giving an opportunity, and I would actually be happy to actually answer, or otherwise actually I will close with this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your perspective, and especially bringing our attention. Twice you've said that sectoral approach needs to be, shunned, and we have to adopt integrated approach that is needed across policy levels. Thank you so much for your intervention. My next speaker today is Mr. Yashveer Bhatnagar. He's the country representative of the International Union for Conservation of Nature, India office. He brings over 3 decades of experience in conservation science and practice, and in program development and management, nationally and internationally. He has led and facilitated multi-stakeholder partnerships across India with government agencies, ministries and forest departments, NGOs, universities, and private sector organizations. Mr. Bhatnagar, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Arvind Kumar and Dr. Shweta, for this opportunity. And Biodiversity Day is an important day for most of us who are concerned about the conservation of biodiversity, persistence of species. But we can see that biodiversity is not doing that well. And there are assessments which show that close to 50%, 48% of the species actually are declining, those species which have been assessed. What I will try to do is to, perhaps I'm the last one in the series of speakers. And, I think all the previous speakers have flagged several important issues. I will like to now sort of present a story based on my 3 decades of experience of working in mainly the high altitudes of India and Central Asia. Yeah, because that sort of brings in and encapsulates a lot of what this theme is about. Biodiversity conservation with energy, water, food security, and in a framework of climate. So what I'm going to speak about is this part of India called Lahul and Spiti, where I spent several years, like I said, about 30 years of my life working in these areas. Starting off with, trying to understand species, wildlife species, but then graduating to understanding threats, working with stakeholders to resolve those threats, and then ultimately use all the insights that we had got to help towards policy and management. And this is where I think it sort of overlaps with the theme of today's webinar. So what we can see here is just briefly about these trans-Himalayan cold desert areas. Many of you might be familiar with Ladakh, for example, and Lahul Spiti is a neighboring part. And the sort of extension of the Tibetan plateau into Himachal Pradesh. This is an area which has very important species like the snow leopard, Dr. Pema mentioned, but not just the snow leopard, several other medicinal plant species occur in these very cold desert, high altitude areas. Apart from these, there are several other wild ungulates, other carnivores that occur in this area, most of which are threatened and occur at very low densities. The interesting part is that unlike the forested areas, the wildlife here is sort of pervasive. It is spread all throughout the landscape, and which basically throws up more challenges for its conservation because there are no exclusive areas for conservation of wildlife. It has to be inclusive. I mean, conservation has to be inclusive anyway, but here it's a compulsion because national parks and sanctuaries are not the only repositories of wildlife. And this is a big challenge for conservation. Now, when we are looking at the communities are mostly agro-pastoral or pastoral or with very, very small parcels of agriculture, because agricultural land itself is very limited to some alluvial fans and some areas where deep soil occurs. And the agricultural growing season itself is restricted to about 3 months. So we are looking at a system where we have marginal communities who are deeply dependent on the mountains to survive through the entire year. And naturally, I think all of you know that these areas are also vulnerable to climate change. So we are looking at a system where we have less than maybe 0.05% of the landscape which is cultivated, but agriculture is very important. A lot of glaciers are there, but the local people are dependent mostly on the small glaciers, which have these, streamlets that supply water, which is potable and which can be used for cultivation. The big rivers that flow, the Spiti, the Satluj, the Indus, very often it's very difficult for the local people to use because of a variety of reasons. Now, if you look at it, the people here face several problems. They have scarcity of land, like I said, for cultivation. There is wildlife everywhere. Also slightly, species like the snow leopard or the Tibetan wolf, which can kill livestock. And thus there is conflict. There are species like the brown bear, which can raid crops and destroy crops. So when there is such a pervasive intermixture of people and wildlife, these problems are significant. On top of that, we are dealing with an area with more than 7 months of winter, about 6 to 7 months of sub-zero temperatures, and winter temperatures going anyway down to -20 to -40 degrees Celsius. So, the need for energy, warmth is not luxury there. So, we are looking at this marginal area. Now, what is happening? There are several changes which have happened, which have been happening in these areas. For example, there is now a demand for agriculture cash crops, off-season crops in, say, August, September. The green peas and cauliflower that we have here in Delhi or some other places in North India very often are grown in these mountain areas. So there is a demand for cash crops such as green peas, cauliflower, broccoli, even iceberg lettuce, which are now grown in these areas. These areas are beautiful. Tourism is an important growing industry here, and increasingly and interestingly, wildlife-based tourism is becoming very important, which is in a way good because that adds direct value for wildlife for the local communities. And there are other issues which are happening, which can be linked to, say, the need for development, or also for, things like tourism infrastructure, where instead of the mud brick housing buildings, increasingly now there are concrete houses, which basically means that the need for heating in winter becomes far more than in the well-insulated mud brick houses. So if you look at the challenges, we can see that the change in agriculture has been good. Like I said, it brings in much more income through the small parcels of land. It's very valuable for the people, and suddenly their level of income has been able to increase several times. But with the climate vulnerability that I alluded to, what is also there is that the time when the crops are maturing in July, August, September, this is the time when the disasters have increased far more. And the marketing, once the mature crop is there, just to send it to the nearest markets here in the plains of northern India becomes that much more challenging. There is an urge now for people to try and expand agriculture, and they are trying to sort of expand into areas where there is real scarcity of water. And water is becoming far more a premium than in the past, because it's a high value crop and they need water. So in terms of tourism, which is again bringing in great amounts of income to the people, but like I said, with increasing problems of related to access due to closure of routes, and also the need for better energy in both summer and winter when it is cold throughout the year. This basically throws up many challenges for the people. Now, what we have been doing is that if you want to conserve this biodiversity, what do? You have species like snow leopard, like I said, throughout the area. So we need to develop landscape level approaches to conserve. Landscape level approaches to conserve requires essentially not just the protected areas, but areas which are under revenue, community ownership, and others. But wildlife values are there everywhere. Species like snow leopards and wolves have very large home ranges. So, there is biodiversity which is spread out, and that needs conservation. And if you have to plan, if you have to conserve, you need to have plans. You need to have landscape level plans. And landscape level plans can't be focused only on biodiversity, because like I said, biodiversity conservation is dependent on the other sectors. Agriculture, because agriculture provides alternative livelihoods for the people not to go out in the mountains to collect fodder and other damaging extraction that can happen. Tourism, when it is directly related to wildlife, it brings positive values for the communities. So they would like to conserve the snow leopards, because when the tourists come, they should be able to see the snow leopards. So there are these values which are there, which need to be harnessed. But for agriculture to succeed, sustainable agriculture, the agriculture sector is very important. Similarly, if energy needs to be ensured that the housing for homestays and others have enough warmth, the local communities themselves have enough warmth, we need to have solar passive structures rather than concrete structures. So there is a very important need to have this kind of view. Also, we need to have better disaster risk reduction for the crops. Maybe we have to have alternative crops processing facilities which can account for uncertainties due to the transport of agricultural produce. What this means is that we had to work on landscape level planning, where we had to look at each sector, their primary schemes, and then see how best we could use those schemes to enable convergences. And with the convergences, so you can imagine a kind of a giant table which looks at themes which are important for conservation in the different sectors, and what are the existing schemes and what are the kind of resources, and then putting them together in a kind of an integrated plan. Also, like was mentioned by Mr. Saravanan just before me, the institutional structures need to be established, and similarly, the financial structures need to be established. So there needs to be a kind of a coordination mechanism with the authority to implement this. So in our case in Spiti, we have been able to establish a local coordination committee and local society. So there is a landscape management plan, which is governed by the local divisional forest officer. There is a landscape level coordination committee and society, which is a registered society, and thus can also channel resources from government and other non-government agencies for more efficient work. So I will basically stop here by kind of underscoring the importance of mainstreaming different sectors for biodiversity conservation, something which I think is generally recognized. And what I just presented is an example which is ongoing in Himachal Pradesh. It's still work in progress. I can't say that we have reached the ultimate success here, but there is a great amount of progress here. I just wanted to end on an optimistic note that silos, the sectors work in silos. That is how I think they are structured to deliver their mandates. But with increasing dialogue, this intersectoral convergences are possible, but I think far greater focus has to be made to work with these agencies and at different levels, not just at the top policy level, but percolating down all the way to the ground level, where these intersectoral linkages are facilitated through demonstration, even if it is a very small demonstration. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Bhatnagar, for showing us the wonderful work that IUCN is doing in these areas which you've mentioned in your intervention. And of course, working in silos sometimes becomes that is something that we just cannot do without. But now everyone is tackling the chains. Any closing comments from any of you, my speakers, who would like to make any closing comment here? Please, the floor is yours. Yes, Mr. Nam, please.
This is not really closing comments, but listening to various interventions, so it is to me also an eye-opening opportunity. And regarding the points from Dr. Chiamso Isimod, we ESCA has great interest in working with the ISMOD, and especially for us, not only Hindu-Kush Himalayan, we have also mountain glaciers in Central Asia. So we are, ready to help any inter-sub-regional collaboration. So we are also ready to attend your ministerial meeting you mentioned in September. So we hope to get information from ICIMOD on this ministerial meeting. And then we are also planning to develop work on ecosystem in Hindu-Kush Himalayan, also connecting that with the Central Asia. So I wish to utilize this opportunity to express our interest as well. And then the intervention from Dr. Saranaban, you highlighted this BBNG. So ESCAP and this UN Office of Legal Affairs, we are going to organize training workshop on BBNJ for South Asia and Southeast Asia. This will be held during it will be a 5-day training workshop starting from 16 September. So while we are going to reach out to our member state on inviting to this, I would like also to share this information with him. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sangman Nam, and I really appreciate that this platform can come to you at for a special collaboration here. So it's wonderful. Dr. Al-Farah, any closing comments from your side?
Not really, but I enjoyed the interaction, and so seeing that the water and land is the center for the recovery of ecosystem-based solution. And as I mentioned, the tool will be available from our Land and Water Division, which can be downloaded, and the guidelines will be available as well. So thank you for this invitation, and it was a pleasure to be part of this team.
Thank you so much. Dr. Gyamso, any comments from your side?
Thank you very much. It's also very interesting to listen to all the panelists. And of course, I think the central theme is similar, the nexus between water, food, ecosystems, energy, and so on. And also the background provided by Dr. Arvind Kumar set the scene. And I think what has come through is again, the need for better cooperation, even among the organizations like ours. I'm happy that several of our partners, like UNEP, IUCN, and now I'm very happy to hear from Dr. Nam about his interest to cooperate with ICIMOD. Yes, ESCAPE is very well known to us, and we have collaborated in few activities in the past, but I think it would be time now for us to come together. And as you said, you are an extent to the mountains in Central Asia. We are already working quite closely with Kyrgyzstan in terms of moving the mountain agenda. For example, at COP28, Kyrgyzstan was very, very active together with Bhutan and Nepal, and we would like to, continue that, and perhaps ESCAPE could bring in the additional momentum that would be required. So we welcome this opportunity, and thank you very much for inviting us both and me to be part of this panel discussion. To you, Shweta, and Dr. Arvind Kumar, he's been taking a lot of initiative. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gyamso. Dr. Kumar, any specific closing comments from your side, please?
Well, undoubtedly, government and agencies like CBD, UNEP, ESCAPE, FAO, UNDP, IUCN, and many more others have a strong commitment to the environment, but it's the people's participation that make all the difference. Engagement with partner organizations in the vital for a tangible result on the ground, and it is just a top-down and bottom-up approach. Means actually identifying the actor and sector synergy, and not only talk about the terrestrial, but equitable biodiversity as well, by sensitizing, incentivizing, galvanizing the stakeholder. We have to bring the community, civil society, and state agencies together for integrated cross-sectoral participation through cooperation, coordination, convergence. With all these tremendous effort, a little more nudge is needed to invest in educate infrastructure, adopt a circularity-wise approach, elicit international cooperation to encourage efficiency, protect and restore ecosystems. I strongly feel that at this critical juncture, there is a dire need to redesign the sectoral intervention, as all speaker actually say about this. We should rewild and revert our ecosystems. Biodiversity, the backbone of economic and environmental value creation, and therefore require the close cooperation within the and between basins along supply chains and as well as within among sectors and countries. We have to facilitate the strategies to promote traditional knowledge and the partnership between different sectors for comprehensive actions from the perspective of climate change and biodiversity loss, while also helping communities do more with us, with less. Thanks.
Mr. Bhatnagar, any closing comment from your side, please?
I think nothing more to add, except that congratulations to the India Water Foundation for organizing this webinar, and I hope 22nd we'll have more important deliberations continuing in different fora.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Dr. Sarvnane, any closing comment from your side, please?
Yeah, I think I must actually take this opportunity to, first of all, thank you for actually educating me with actually some of the progress which is actually happening outside my domain area. So with that, actually, I also wish to actually kind of give a suggestion, if it is possible,
Please.
you as a leading organization on the meeting certain conservation objective, aiming for actually biodiversity, etc. There must be actually series of actually such event, focusing not only actually on the land biodiversity but also actually marine biodiversity, because all of us know that this is actually a water planet. Actually, 70% of the actually area of the water planet has been covered by the sea, and the changes which is happening in the sea is what you are getting reflected in actually the land. This has been actually the the latest revelation of actually science. So how the process actually in the marine environment is affecting the land and land biodiversity. So such kind of actually initiative, I think your organization, I wish actually you take up probably actually with an intimation to our ministry as well. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, we will be keep on, organizing these kind of events, and of course, we seek support from the Ministry of Earth Sciences, definitely for our future events as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Sarvnani. And as I conclude now, I would like to say that the world is making some progress towards preserving biodiversity and agreed to a new global biodiversity framework. However, there are serious obstacles to realizing the framework. The framework calls for a huge reduction in subsidies, which encourage the use of pesticides and fertilizers, threatening vested interests. Additionally, nature-positive farming may make food less available and more expensive in a world where food security is already a big issue. But threats to biodiversity directly contribute to climate change. And without protecting biodiversity, a habitat climate cannot be preserved. Steps need to be taken towards becoming less reliant on large-scale monoculture and make better use of agroecology, sustainable farming which reduces emissions, works with nature, and empowers farming at local level. Fundamentally, all threats to biodiversity are related to humanity's drive for economic growth, built on increased consumption of food, energy, and natural resources. To preserve the natural world, governments need to integrate biodiversity considerations across all sectors, as has already been spoken by all of the speakers in this session. It is assumed that collaboration between the sectors and actors outside the community, the financial sector, private sector, energy sector, agricultural sector, will lead to a more comprehensive, holistic solutions that can achieve the needed monumental gains. Partnerships, announcements of them, celebrations of them are the front and center of the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Business as usual will not get us where we need to. The crux of all the discussions that we engage in is that partnerships, if approached fully with the right set of metrics in place in a collaborative manner, can be the game changer we seek. Thank you, dignitaries. India Water Foundation and Ministry of Jal Shakti, Government of India are grateful to you all for taking out time from your extremely busy schedule and gracing this event to deliberate on such a crucial topic. Thank you, my lovely audience, for wonderful remarks and some interesting comments. We shall get back to you with answers shortly because of the lack of time. Thank you, everyone, and have a very good evening or afternoon as per your time zones. Thank you so much. And especially my online audience which joined from all over the world to witness this deliberation. Thank you so much. And with this, I end this dialogue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we look forward to have you all for the next series of our program. Thank you so much, and we seek your cooperation and support. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.